What's going on YouTube, and welcome to another edition of my Marvel Rewatch. In today's video, this is movie, let's see, Iron Man was 1, 2, 3, this is movie number 4, Thor. So yeah, we're going to talk about the first ever Thor movie and see if it really holds up. So I watched Thor for the first time in probably since the theater all the way through. No, maybe not. I think the last time I sat down and watched all these was leading up to the first Avengers, and then I just sat around, just let it be. But yeah, the first Thor movie. Years ago when I saw this movie, there were elements of it that I liked, but overall, I didn't really care for it all that much. I think it was a pretty forgettable movie, especially compared it to what we have today. Granted, Marvel was still trying to get their shit together, and we kind of just accepted it, I feel like, back then. If you watch this movie nowadays, you're just going to be like, oh, well, this is just kind of meh. Because we've gotten so much better content. I honestly feel like post-Phase 1. Initially, I used to think Phase 1 was better, but after rewatching some of these movies, I'm like, oh, Phase 2 and 3 looking a lot better than this stuff. So, the first Thor movie, I think my biggest issue with the first Thor movie is honestly Thor's character development. This whole movie takes place over the span of 3 days, and his development comes way too quickly. There's no real passage of time. It's like he loses his hammer for one day, and all of a sudden he's like, oh, I'm good, I'm great, I'm all worthy and stuff nowadays. I learned every single lesson possible. I'm like, wow, that was really quick. Why didn't you just take away his toy years ago? So, been perfectly fine. Then you have Loki. Even Tom Hiddleston. Tom Hiddleston's great in the Avengers. He's fine in this movie, but really I feel like post-Avengers, they really fixed a lot of these characters. Like Black Widow, pre-Avengers, just, alright, just kind of there. The only one who really, Chris Hemsworth is great in this movie. He's a perfect Thor. He's got the comedy down, he's got the action sequences down, dude's a badass. He can pull all sorts of layers of emotion. As we know now, Chris Hemsworth has great comedic timing. And he's really good in this movie. Tom Hiddleston is really good as Loki, and Anthony Hopkins is good as Thor. The bad, though, the movie, this one was directed by Kenneth Branagh, and he has a real fascination in tilted camera angles. I was getting Battlefield Earth flashbacks because the camera tilts so many fucking times. Every other shot is a tilted shot, and it just, a few here or there are okay, but they just overdo it, and it just looks... it doesn't really do it for me. Other things I kind of like, Asgard itself looks kind of neat. The designs in that look very beautiful. It's definitely got an old school, Renaissance painting type vibe, or old school Viking paintings. There's some scope to the movie when they get to Asgard. That is not the case when they get to the little city in New Mexico. Yeah, it doesn't even look like a real town. It just looks like a little set that they put together, which, is kind of cheesy. But yeah, so Thor's arc is, he's an asshole, he's a real prick, he thirsts for battle, something happens when he's on his way to becoming king, and he gets banished and cast out. He's like, and you are an old man and a fool, Odin. He thirsts for battle. Odin casts him out so that Thor can learn his lesson, and once his hammer is taken away, he quickly learns, really. He doesn't, he learns it a little bit too quickly. He's, completely changed overnight, which is kind of surprising considering how old he is. It all took was just one day and Natalie Portman and her wormhole to completely change him, so I guess that's a good thing. The side characters, you have... Selvig, who's okay. Jane Foster's kind of a lackluster love interest. She's just there because all of a sudden they kind of seemingly really love or care for each other, and basically less than a span of 3 days. This movie, it's 3 days basically. He just gets cast out one night. He spends the next day getting accustomed to them. Then he wakes up the day after that, and Loki tries to destroy the Bifrost and all the Frost Giants, and Loki finds out he's an alien, and so on and so forth. And another thing that kind of bugs me now, going back and watching this, is Loki has these Frost Giant powers, and he completely forgets about them. I completely forgot about them too, until I went back and rewatched the first Thor movie. I'm like, why doesn't he use these more often? It just kind of left me a little baffled, a little bit confused. Oh, there's some little bits here that I forgot. And even Hawkeye makes a cameo. I completely forgot about it. The comedy there's a few bits with Hemsworth that are funny, but a lot of the comedy falls on Kat Dennings, and it is very cringeworthy and awful. She is so annoying and is the worst part of any of these Thor movies. I'm so glad that she was just completely forgotten about in Ragnarok. Kat Dennings is really bad in these movies. I'm sure she's fine on Two Broke Girls. I never really watched the show, but she just doesn't do anything for me. The final battle, we get this thing called the Destroyer Armor, and this thing looks badass as shit. Like, it's just like, it kind of reminds me of The Day the Earth Stood Still, like Gord or whatever, and like kind of that remake. He just kind of has like the plasma beam head. And this thing looks like it's this big, powerful thing. It takes out Lady Sif and the Warriors 3, who are, you know, pretty pathetic. And Thor gets his hammer, takes the thing out in like 20 seconds. Once again, another anticlimactic final battle in a Marvel movie. What else do we got? Then Loki comes in. He's doing God knows whatever. I honestly, Loki's plan just gets kind of confusing at some points. It's just like he seems like he's there for Odin, and there's times where he seems like he hates Odin. He's the god of mischief for a reason. He just likes to start shit, but some of it just gets kind of out of hand at times. At the end of the movie, Loki gets cast off to Earth, and then the post-credit sequence, they show the Tesseract, which would appear in Captain America, whereby they set Loki up as the main villain in the Avengers. And Loki has done much better in the Avengers than he has done in Thor. Because, I mean, Loki gained all those fans, I feel like, after Avengers. Because when it came to the first Thor movie, nobody really seemed to talk too much about Loki. I think it was just the writing and directing of Joss Whedon that really fleshed out this character. And, you know, he showed off charisma. He was not really an intimidating villain. He was just a charming, fun, mischievous villain. And the first Avengers movie is just a blast. So I can't wait to get to that one. But before that, the next film in this Marvel Rewatch is going to be Captain America, the First Avenger. Now, that movie I really liked when I first saw that one. That was one of my favorite Marvel movies. I feel like Captain America has the most solid, consistent movies in terms of the MCU. Because Thor, like, his first two movies aren't that good, but I liked Ragnarok. Iron Man is like the complete opposite. His first movie is really good, and the other two are not. And then Captain America, like, I mean, some people like Winter Soldier the most, some people like Civil War, and some people like the First Avenger. It's kind of toss-up for me of which one I like the most, but we'll know upon my rewatching, because I like Winter Soldier. I don't like how it ends, though. I think it's a little bit too abrupt. And Civil War, I like a lot of it, but, like, I may like Winter Soldier more. I think it's more focused. But that's all up for debate. So, first Thor movie, it's all right. It doesn't hold up quite that well, especially compared to, like, where the Marvel movies are at now. It's pretty dated. The too many Dutch camera angles, lackluster third act. Thor's character development is rushed way too much. His change is just so abrupt, and it doesn't really feel organic. It's just like, yeah, he's done. I'm like, oh, I guess we're not going to really spend much time. I think the movie needed to take place over the course of a few weeks, or at least a week, to really see this change in Thor, because I feel like it's just way too abrupt for him to all of a sudden go from this, you know, where he was in the beginning to where he is now. So at the end of the film, it just felt a bit too abrupt for me. And then, of course, at the end of the credits, they tease Thor will return in the Avengers. That's kind of the first time Marvel is really doing that, and it's kind of cool to go back and see where it's all leading up to. I'm having a fun time, though. Like, I mean, so the last three movies, they haven't been that great. Iron Man 2, I think, is still the worst. I'll go ahead and rank the movies by the time we get to the Avengers after I watch the first Avenger with Captain America. But I remember really liking Captain America, so we'll see where it goes from here. But I like period piece superhero movies, so that's one of my things. All right, that's gonna wrap it up. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time, and on the next Marvel Rewatch.